this is Global Africa Mental Health Network. One of the things that we're trying to do is get Africans who have like mind to come together to talk about the mental health needs in our community. And when I say Global Africa, we just mean Africans or Black people or Africans wherever they may find themselves, both here in the diaspora and on the continent. And diaspora means all the Africans who came here either voluntarily or involuntarily on this side of the Atlantic and on the other side as well. So that's what this network is. And so we try to get as much good content as possible, what we are doing and what's happening in our community, to just share with each other, to prepare us and, if you like, provide us resources to help in the mental health in our community. I think that's kind of in a nutshell. There's many more things that we do, but those are at least given what we're trying to do today. That's we're in that mindset of, what do we do, how we handle mental health in our community, and how we can help each other to do a better job of it. Okay, so without taking too much time, thereabout. Okay, so I first, Rachel, we will talk during the time of discussion, because I want to give you time to give us a presentation. I asked her to present for 30 minutes, and then we'll have questions and answers and some ideas about just talking about what it will mean, how to apply some of the things she's going to talk about. She's been involved in this work with sex trafficking for quite some time. So I'll let her tell her story. But before we do that, I'd like for us to start with a word of prayer, and then I will hand it over to Lord. Thank you for this morning. Thank you for bringing all of us here. Thank you that it's been some time we haven't been together to talk about these things. I pray that you will help us as we look at a topic that is very, very important. There's a lot of data out there to show how prevalent this issue is, especially in our community, and we want you to help us today as we listen to talk, that we'll be able to learn some things and things that will help us in our practice and in the work that we do, especially within our community. We just thank you and we bless you. Give us a wonderful time learning from each other. In your wonderful name we pray. Amen. Okay. All right. I'm going to hand it over to you, and then you will go from here.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for
morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Okay, come on, feedback. I like thank you. Thank you guys for inviting me this morning. I'm really excited. This is probably a topic I'm most passionate about. So I love any opportunity to share about it. And I am excited to be in this group because Dr. Goris has been so instrumental in helping me do this work. So it's a double bonus to be here specifically. So thank you guys. I would say that my presentation is typically pretty informal because I really just talk about the work and talk about how I got to the work. And so I always start by telling people a little bit about me and my family, because it goes to, of course, like I said, how I got here. But also how prevalent trafficking is. I think that it's such a daunting topic that it feels kind of far from us. It feels like something maybe you might see in a movie or on TV. And so we don't recognize how close to home it can be. And so I look like your everyday, African-American Black girl. I look much younger than I am. Thank you, Jesus. But I think most people would never assume when we see each other in the grocery store, at the gas station, in our churches even, that this is something that happens as commonly as it does. And so I get to put a face to some of these things. I have never personally experienced human trafficking specifically, but I like to tell my story starting with my mom. Um, I am the eldest of four children. Um, and my mother was an only child that she knew of. She was an only child. Her father denied that she belonged to him. And so she was raised by her mother, my grandmother. Um, and my grandmother was the oldest of um, 13 living children. 13 living children. Her mother had lost something like 7 or 8 children, but 13 lived. So my mother grew up in a huge family of aunts and uncles and cousins, but she was the only child of the oldest um, of 13 living children. And her mother, my grandmother, was extremely abusive, very, very, very violent, um, very mentally, physically, verbally abusive. And so my mother, at a really young age, um, left her mother. And she really struck out on her own, taking care of herself. She had me when she was 18 years old. And she ended up in, after my father, an abusive relationship with a drug dealer. So her, again, coming from leaving her family, not really having a lot of support, having me and at that time 2 of my siblings, she needed support. She needed emotional support. She needed financial support. And um, she found that in a man who was, like I said, a drug dealer. So he actually, um, what we may refer to as, you know, in the different abusive cycles, he was a love bomber. He would shower her with gifts and things that she'd never experienced before and the like. And this created, kind of this feigned sense of security for her. And then, of course, he would abuse her. Well, her being, again, away from everyone that she knew and coming from abuse, this was familiar to her. Though it was really, really toxic, she didn't know any difference. And so my mom began to cope with the abuse of substances. And she began working with this man. So she is now involved in drug abuse and the sale of drugs. She didn't really like being involved in selling drugs all that much. And so he introduced her then to another part of his work, which was trafficking women. So my mom became what we call a madam, so to speak. And so my mom took care of the women who they were trafficking. So I say this to say how easy it is to get kind of swept up in this world, whether you are being trafficked or whether you are involved or engaging in the quote unquote business of it. And this is how I came to be exposed to it, even as a very, very young girl. So it became somewhat normalized to me to see women around all the time, to see all the men and how they engaged with the women around. Things that were extremely abusive, I was introduced to early enough that it almost became my norm. It almost became my norm. My saving grace was that my father and his family fought to get custody of me and my siblings. And so we eventually were with my father's family. And that is how I think I got any shot, any chance of a different a different life, seeing a different normal, and recognizing that that was actually extremely abusive, extremely toxic, and that there was more, that there was more. Otherwise, I can see how I would have easily wound up in that same world in some way, shape, or form. So this is something that I think, you know, even before I came to become a counselor, even before I came to work in human traffic specifically, this is something I believe the Lord has called me to. I believe that I'm able to show up in this work the way that I am because of the exposure that I have had. I think I'm able to relate on some level to the women that I get to meet because I watched my mom and how she interacted with them. And so this is not just a job for me. This is a literal calling. I was created to do this work. The Lord cultivated me even after conceiving me and me being born. He used everything that the enemy meant for evil in my mother's life, in my life, and is now turning it for my good and his glory. And I pray the good of the women that I get to meet. So fast forward, today I'm a licensed professional counselor. I work in private practice, and I actually do that work part-time. What led me to that specifically, I've always felt like the Lord has used me in a counseling capacity. I love meeting new people. I love hearing people's stories. I've always been a person, even again as a younger woman, who people have been able to talk to me very vulnerably, very openly, been able to share things with me. And I think, again, it's because my upbringing just kind of cultivated this non-judgmental, actionary listening skill in me. And so I have always kind of functioned as a counselor, but my first love is outreach. I absolutely love outreach. I love, love, love. Of course, as a Christian, I love the work of walking around like Jesus did, just walking around, talking to people, meeting people, asking people what they need, anticipating their needs. My background is in social work. I started at a domestic violence shelter in my career. And so there, of course, there were women who were escaping intimate partner violence, domestic violence, human trafficking. And so, again, I'm just always around people who are a part of this world and this life. So then in outreach work through my church, I got connected with a woman who was a part of an organization who specifically fought human trafficking. And it was just one of those God moments. It was a moment where I believe the Lord didn't speak audibly, but he definitely spoke into our spirits. We connected. And he brought back to my remembrance a dream that I had as a young girl. And it was me handing out roses in front of a strip club. And so it was so ironic because meeting this woman who was in this work, she was explaining to me what they do. And so I committed to working with this team. It was a very small team of people, Christians, right here in the greater Kansas City area. And so that is how I got involved and engaged in the work specifically. So to tell you a little bit about what we do in this organization, we actually get to go out into the spaces where women are being trafficked, women are being prostituted, and connect with them. We take a gift, which is typically like a bag of hygiene products, makeup, hair products, all the things that, you know, women love. And we also sometimes can put in their bags different resources We camouflage the resources because, again, remember, these women are being trafficked and prostituted. And so we never want to send them home with anything that might be telling of them trying to get help, trying to get support, trying to get out. This would be very dangerous for them. So we can do that, but we're very discreet and discretionary about how we do that. But the point is to gift them something that says, we see you, that you have value, that you are important and you are significant and you mean something to God and you mean something to people too. And so our goal in meeting these women and taking them this gift is to open up dialogue with them and create and cultivate relationship. That's our primary goal. We want to get to know them. We want to get to know their children. We want to get to know their family if they have it, which they often do not. We want to be a sense of family when they don't. We want to be a resource to them. So helping them at times, finding a place to live, getting a car, getting a job, should they want to come out of the life. Any way that we can be a support to them, we want to do that. But more than anything, we want to be a friend. We want to be a friend. For these women, oftentimes they are isolated away from their any social network of support. Oftentimes, traffickers will transport women to areas unfamiliar to them. So they will travel across states and even across the country at times, because the traffickers want to keep a sense of isolation. If a woman has been in a network or community too long and she starts to even build connections with other women that she's working with, they'll split them up. They really, really focus on keeping them, again, isolated from any sense of support. And that is obviously strategic on their part. It's not only keeping them physically isolated, but that impacts them mentally as well. Imagine being somewhere where you don't know anyone, you might not even know the language. And not only are you being abused and trafficked, but you're alone. You're completely alone. That is psychologically defeating in many cases, and it keeps them in the life. When they feel like they don't have anyone or anywhere to go, it kind of takes the fight out of them. So that is a part of why it's so important to us to simply connect with them. So we canvass highly trafficked areas. We call them red light districts. We have a team who has done research and field research in finding out where are the hot spots or the areas where we see this happening most prevalently. And we walk those areas at the same time that they work. So a lot of times we get together in one of our houses. We have prayer, we have worship, we encourage one another. We get into the word together. And then at about 11, 12, 1 a.m., we go out to the red light districts and canvass the streets. And this is how we get to meet them. So we have the gifts, we see them, we speak to them, oftentimes very, very briefly. Their pimps is what they're referred to as, will often drop them off in an area and park close enough to be able to police them. And so they may see us walking and see us give them a gift and allow us to speak to them for mere moments or minutes. And then they'll use the intimidation factor to scoot us along. And we do. We don't want to get these women in trouble. We don't want to do anything to exacerbate any abuse. And so we acculturate, so to speak. We do what we can in the minutes that we get. And then we move on. We have a very non-confrontational approach to the work that we do. So again, we're able to connect with them. Sometimes we're able to exchange phone numbers if they are willing or able. And then we reach out to them later. We invite them to breakfast or brunch or coffee, just to spend time with them, just to engage them, just to listen to them and hear from them. Again, that is our goal. If they decide that they want help or support, we offer that. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just need a friend, and they continue the work. And that is okay with us too. That is okay with us too. So, beyond canvassing the red light districts where women are actively being prostituted, we also have been able to cultivate relationship with some of the clubs, specifically strip clubs. So we have our leader of our team has gone into some of these clubs many years before I was a part of the organization, met the madams, met the owners, met the bouncers, met the security, and established a relationship where the club owners allow us to come in and bring gifts to their dancers. They see it as morale boosting, and they don't see us as a threat. Ironically enough, they said the girls love you. You bring them makeup and hair and da 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 da. So come on in. So we go into the clubs. Typically, we find the night that is busiest because that's usually the night where the most girls are there. Um, and so we go in. There are customers there. There is dancing happening there. We do have men on our team. They serve as security, but the men never enter the club. The men actually are the ones who cultivate the relationship with the bouncers at the door or the security or the doorman. And so they stay outside the door, but they stay close enough that if we need them and we communicate with them, they're able to respond. So we don't not only are building relationship with the victims of trafficking, but we're building relationship with those who are involved, those who are compliant, so to speak, even if they aren't the ones specifically trafficking. When we go into the clubs, we normally will go into their dressing rooms. So we have to obviously move through the floor, through the customers, into the space where the women collect to get ready, and where they keep all their things. And so the women are coming in and out of these areas, and we just kind of set up shop there. And again, our intention is to give them gifts and to talk with them. So, we're talking with women. We're looking at pictures of the kids. We're catching up what's been going on this week. How's school going? How's your mom? What, again, just cultivating relationship with them. We're often not even speaking to anything that they're experiencing in that moment because, again, madams are always present and walking around, much like my mom was, and they are often making sure that we're not doing anything that would negatively impact their business. That's a part of their role too. Anything that would need to be reported to the pimps, the Johns, the owners, they would be reporting that back. So again, when we're in these spaces, we are absolutely assimilating to the culture, and we want to keep them as safe as we can. And so it's just to establish a relationship with them. That's our intention when we're there. Give them the gifts, conversation, and to establish, if we can, a connection with them. And then we leave. We're there maybe for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then we move out. Another way that we're able to connect with the women, we go on what we refer to as missions. And these mission trips are not just overseas. We do that anywhere there's a large gathering of men. Trafficking is prevalent. So what, again, researchers in this work found early on is huge sporting events. Oftentimes, gambling is involved in these sporting events. And if you see huge sporting events, large groups of men in gambling, you're sure to find trafficking as well. So the Olympic Games, the Kentucky Derby, the NBA Finals, the Super Bowl, any huge sporting event you can think of, we travel to these events and we establish relationship with local law enforcement. And again, we have teams of people who are excellent at this. They're very proficient in this. We partner with law enforcement. And our goal, obviously, again, is to be a presence at these events. We want the women to know that, again, we're here, we're friends, we're a safe person for you to call on if you need us. But we want them to know that we're aware of what's going on, that someone's aware of what's going on. And this is an opportunity, should you need it, to escape. When we're at these events, again, because we have established relationship with local law enforcement, if a woman decides, I want out, we move immediately. There's no going back and getting your things. There's no calling someone and letting them know. Immediately, we have them on the grounds with us, and we call them in to remove these women immediately. We offer them resources in getting them back to their families. Sometimes that's a plane ticket, a bus ticket, a train ticket. We also are able to connect them with other organizations in this work where they live, should they live somewhere away, so that they can get the resources that they need, again, to find work, to get a car, to get a home. So that's the goal in doing that work. Is obviously to be on the ground. We walk. My last mission trip was the Super Bowl in Miami, now several years back, and before the pandemic. And what we were able to do, because there's a strip in Miami where all of the different sports channels are, they're set up on the beach, where you see ESPN being broadcasted. All of that is happening on one big strip. And so we were able to canvass the area and educate people who were there actually to enjoy the game. We were able to educate them on trafficking and share with them. Are you aware that this is a problem? Are you aware how prevalent it is? And here are some of the things that you can look for when you're seeing women or a woman who looks to be a girl, maybe dressed up with a man that's maybe older than her or of a different socioeconomic background than her or a different culture than her. If you're seeing a woman, we went into hotels and talked with the staff at hotels. And if you're seeing a woman, the same woman in and out of the hotel, if you're seeing the same gentleman kind of coming in for short periods of time in the hotel, just educating people on what you can be looking for to be a part of this work. Even if it's just to report. We gave them contact information, of course, not the women specifically, but we would give people, when we're canvassing and educating, we would give people contact information to say, if you see something, if you even think it looks suspicious, give us a call. And we have people on the grounds 24/7 to respond to those calls. So that's a part of what we're able to do when we travel to these huge sporting events. One other thing that I'll tell you about that we're able to do when we go on missions is there's always what we call it. There's always a base, so to speak, where we all meet back up at, those of us who are engaged in the work, right? And we're doing this work 24/7. There's always someone available at this space. And there's always a prayer room 24/7. So there is ministry going for 24/7. So anytime we're able to go out and canvas or go into the clubs or even brothels, which they are massage parlors where other things are happening, we call them brothels. We go out and do that work, and then we come back to the base where we can either go and sit in the prayer room. I've gone to the prayer room and just sat, for 8 hours straight after canvassing or being out in the field. So the prayer room's available to us. But something else that's happening at base, which I think is extraordinary, is because women can place ads to sell sex, and men are responding to those ads, men who we refer to as John. There is an outreach initiative specifically for or centered around the Johns. So because this is a Christian ministry, we believe that Jesus loves them too, and salvation is available for them too. And so they have phone lines set up. And again, because of the relationship established with local law enforcement, what they're able to do is essentially set them up. So they're calling in response to an ad that they see to buy sex. And the call is intercepted by one of the men on our team. The men immediately let them know, hey, brother, I am not whatever the young lady's name is or whatever she posed as, because they often almost never use their own name. My name is Bob, and I've intercepted this call. I will be forwarding your information to local law enforcement. But before I do, I want to, I just want to talk with you. I just want to share the love of God with you. I want to pray with you. I want to hear if there's any needs you have. Is there anything that's going on that, you want to get off your chest? And so there's ministry available even to the men who are buying sex. Now we do move forward still in prosecuting when we can and where we can. But the point is, our ministry is centered around sharing the love of Christ, being a friend, and of course, offering support and resources to these women when and where we can. So that is the great work that I get to do and that I get to be a part of. In doing that work, I was meeting women all the time we were able, again, I have a social work background working in a DV shelter. And so showing up with resources, kind of my thing, being available when they need help. But I started to notice, the impact for these women, even when they come out of the life, is significant. And it's very difficult for them, even sometimes when we get them the resources, we get them a home, we get them a car, we help them get their kids back. They're still struggling. They're still struggling. And so I went back to school to be a counselor because I said there's even more work to be done even after they're rescued, so to speak, out of the life. And so a lot of the women that I get to see in my counseling work are coming out of this life. And so I get to offer them resources in trauma processing and EMDR and brain spotting and somatic work. I get to offer them a listening ear sometimes. Sometimes that's the extent of the work that I do. Is that just obviously of all that we all do is to listen, is to just listen. And so that's my experience with trafficking specifically. Yeah, so that's my spiel. If anybody, I don't know, Dr. Goris, how you want to move forward.